Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Well, of course, as we've been talking about the climate conference going on in Paris, we're going to have an interview with a filmmaker about a groundbreaking film that he has showing the false narrative of polar bears disappearing and disappearing ice caps. That's going to be in the next segment. Jakari Jackson is joining us now with some other news, because there are other things that are happening besides the global takeover of everything.
Yeah, besides these guys flying around in their private jets with their limos and all this stuff, renting out entire floors and hotels to serve their aides and all this stuff. But they want to come and tell you about your climate. But there are other things going on in the world right now, David, such as the DEA. We know the war on drugs, or as many people say, the failed war on drugs. And when you think about these gangster movies, Dave, the old prohibition movies, these guys riding around with the machine guns, Tommy guns, shooting people dead in the street. And people, they look back at that period in history. They can watch these things on the History Channel, and they say, that's so barbaric. How could people possibly allow this to happen in the United States of America, that we would outlaw something to the point where we'd have violent crime running rampant in the streets, black markets created. Meanwhile, we have the American drug war going on right now.
Same thing, drive-by shooting, same motivation.
Yeah, the exact same things that are going on right now. And now we have the article, the DEA has failed to eradicate marijuana. Some members of Congress want it to stop trying. And this documents how the DEA spends about $18 million in efforts with state and local authorities to pull up marijuana plants being grown indoors and outdoors. In the mid-2000s, it became clear that the overwhelming majority of marijuana plants netted by the program were actually ditchweed, a wild, non-cultivated, non-psychoactive cousin of marijuana. So a lot of these marijuana plants they're actually digging up, David, aren't even marijuana. They resemble marijuana. They don't have any of the effects of marijuana, but meanwhile, these guys...
Sounds like the solution to climate change. You know, we'll go out and we'll do something, we'll pay ourselves, we'll create this massive bureaucracy.
Yes.
We'll transfer money from the taxpayer to this bureaucracy. We'll take away your freedoms, we'll take away the rule of law, we'll take away sovereignty, and yet we'll declare victory, you know, because we're picking up these
yeah, because we're picking up these weeds, and some estimates are saying that the DEA spends about $4.20, $4.20 on the marijuana plants for each one, and in other estimates they say some of them cost about $60 per plant to uproot. So that's after they get all the guys and the MRAPs and the heavy arm to go out there and do all these things. They're estimating that it can cost about as much as $60 per plant, assuming they even find real ones.
Absolutely insane. And you know, there's this article that came out this week in Jakari about this college student right here in Texas, College Station, Texas A&M. She was 19 and she got a lot of publicity because they took her mugshot, and she's smiling, you know, and it's like, she's facing some really serious charges. You know, why is she smiling? I mean, she was there for heavy quantity of drugs, a wide variety of drugs. She had cocaine, marijuana, ecstasy, meth in her apartment in large quantities. She had a drug price list, handwritten, 2 digital scales. They had packaging material. They had emails showing that she's dealing. But she's smiling. Now we know why she's smiling. Her father is a big wig in the DEA.
Oh.
And I think it really shows the bankruptcy of this whole approach. You know, they say in this article from the Daily Mail, they say her father, Bill Furray, is a hardened, no-nonsense law enforcer who sees drug dealers as a scourge of society. Now, I would say the scourge of society is the failure of families, the failure of personal responsibility, the failure of any kind of morality or rule of law. All of those things are being wiped out by our society, by our government, especially by the war on drugs. And I think it shows the futility of a father who is out there arresting people, using the hammer of law enforcement to try to solve a problem that is essentially one that is spiritual in nature, that has to do with the breakdown of society, but they're going to do it with law enforcement, with prohibition, and all that does is make the problem worse. But she may be smiling because she knows Daddy's going to make sure that she doesn't go to jail for an extended period of time, because that's the other thing that we see, how the people who are at the top of this, this empire that we have built basically just run right through these laws. They don't get
Absolutely. Just I believe it was one of Jeb's daughters, one of the Bush girls, who got caught with whatever drug it was. And I'm not saying lock her away and throw away the key, but Jeb, if you're going to let your daughter off, why don't you release some of these people from prisons?
It was prescription drugs.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the other stuff. It was prescription drug abuse. And at the time they pointed that out, Jakari, he really came down on the Miami paper that pointed this out. But then he brings it up himself as a badge of compassion because he shares your pain. No, he doesn't share your pain, because his daughter's life was not destroyed.
Yes.
She wasn't sent to jail for a very long period of time. They caught her with prescription drugs, and then while she was under treatment or something, then they caught her with, I think, cocaine or something. I'm not sure of the details of that. But nevertheless, She's caught with multiple issues like that. And we've seen all these politicians like Carly Fiorina, you know, using her stepdaughter, who was a grown woman at the time, who died from alcohol and abuse of prescription drugs, using that to say, no, for marijuana, we need to shut this down. And while we talk about Chris Christie, he also used a friend of his. And you know, he got an endorsement this weekend from the New Hampshire major newspaper, the New Hampshire Union. And this is what they said. I thought it was very funny because I can't help but make fun of Chris Christie on a personal level because he's such an authoritarian creep. I can't stand this guy because he's constantly pushing for the war on drugs. They said it was an enormous win for Christie, who has campaigned heavily in New Hampshire. And I would add that he is sagging behind in 7th place. But they endorsed him, and I guess that's kind of an endorsement for them. But we don't endorse Chris Christie or his policies. He's the guy who says that he's going to shut things down in Colorado, where the voters said, no, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to do this insanity for marijuana. They're still going to continue the insanity and the illegal war on drugs for other drugs, but not for marijuana. And he says, well, we're going to make sure that you don't have that right. See, the reality, Jakari, that we've been talking about all along is that when you're talking about alcohol prohibition, as you began this discussion, that was done with an amendment to the Constitution in recognition that there is no inherent power in the Constitution, no specifically delegated power in the Constitution to the federal government to handle any of that.
Yes.
It's a state issue. If the states wanted to ban alcohol, they could ban alcohol or marijuana or anything else. But if they say they don't want to do it, then the government really doesn't have the authority. And I think the move that we're seeing right now is not a move of compassion all of a sudden, but it's the fact that in these various states, people have stood up to the government with state nullification and said, no, you're not going to have a war on marijuana here. We're sick of this nonsense. And they're either going to have to back down and say, all right, yeah, we're going to make marijuana legal everywhere, or it's going to be revealed that the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah, they don't want that to be shown because just like we have this article here, David, talking about the rise of synthetic drugs, they have the drug called Spice, which is making people sick all over California. And it says this is the second weekend in a row that police officers saw multiple overdoses in the area. This is in San Diego, bringing the total number of those sickened to around 30 people. So basically they have these synthetic drugs, Spice, it also goes by the name K2, Joker, Black Mamba, Kush, Chronic, and things of the sort. Now it is illegal in California, but it is legal in other places. So people saying, well, you won't give us the real weed, so we'll go out and smoke fake weed that makes us sick.
Yeah, or skunk. We saw the article said that skunk destroys white brain matter. And I tweeted out, black brain matter matters.
Yes.
But the bottom line is people need to understand these synthetic and concentrated forms of drugs are a fruit of prohibition. We saw it happen with alcohol. Prior to alcohol prohibition, people were mainly, doing beer at low levels, wine at low levels, but then they got into very hard concentrated forms of hard liquor because of prohibition. Yeah, they get into the harder, more concentrated forms because it's easier for them to transport that out. And then they come up with very dangerous forms of it, like wood alcohol that was making people blind. So that's the fruit of prohibition. We've talked to law enforcement officers against prohibition many times in this program to talk about the evils of prohibition. And that's just one more of them, the synthetic concentrated forms of it.
Yeah, and I believe you had an article, David, talking about Bernie Sanders and Hillary are actually getting in on the debate, talking about the war on drugs, in particular marijuana. Now, many people are going to ask, well, why would they want to get involved in this type of situation? But as you were pointing out to me during the break, well, maybe they see that they're losing this effort in the cause and the drug war as far as marijuana. They still want to ban cocaine and heroin, and I'm not saying go out and do any of those things.
Yeah, right.
But, they're saying
it's about personal responsibility.
Yeah, but they're saying, well, okay, well, we see that we're filling our prisons with all these nonviolent offenders. Maybe we should step back at least on this particular issue of it.
Yeah, and they're going to lose if they continue to push this illegal war on drugs, if they try to challenge the states. I think that's the fundamental thing about it. We've got 1 minute left. You got a quick story there that you wanted to cover?
Well, I mean, just as we think about this war on drugs, when you're putting nonviolent people into the prison so much at the rate where you have to release violent offenders, we see murderers and rapists and armed robbers and people of this sort being released back out to the streets because, some kid who got caught with a few joints in his pocket is now serving his sentence under a mandatory minimum. It's completely ridiculous. It needs to stop. I'm not telling anybody to go out there and do whatever type of drug, but I do support things like medical marijuana, which is very ridiculous to me when people will just come down on medical marijuana. Meanwhile, you can go to the pharmacy and get high as a kite off half the stuff in there anyway.
Well, that's just it, Jakari. It's about informed consent. If they can tell you that you can't take something that you want to take for your own medical use, whether it's medical marijuana or whether it's an unapproved cancer drug, they can also force you to take vaccines that you don't think are safe and effective.
Yes.
So it's really fundamentally about your freedom.
Knockout is back. If you want a product that has 10 known ingredients that naturally get your body to relax, your brain to relax, so you get deep, restful sleep, Knockout's it. Infowarslife.com. L-theanine, hops flower extract, lemon balm extract, valerian root extract, chamomile flower extract, L-tryptophan extract, melatonin, and more. All organic, all the natural sources. It's the same price as leading brands of melatonin that are 3 milligrams a piece. It has 3 milligrams, the standard recommended dose for an adult. It's got the GABA, so it would probably cost $50 to take all this as separate pills. It's $19.95. You take 1 or 2 of these, and it just is really clean, restful sleep is what the reviews are. It's what I've experienced. And it just synergistically puts everything in there. Infowarslife.com. That's Infowarslife.com. Or call 888-253-3139.
You are watching the Infowars Nightly News, which airs 7 p.m. Central at Infowarsnews.com. And your support is helping us defend liberty worldwide.